So good morning again, everyone. My name is Mark Cormier, and on behalf of the organizing committee of the National Conference for Teachers of English Costa Rica, I want to welcome you to our next interactive webinar. Alex Warren is a Delta-trained teacher trainer with over 16 years of experience working in English language teaching as a teacher, an academic director, and a teacher trainer. Prior to his experiences in ELT, Alex worked as a journalist before a chance encounter in the Indonesian jungle began him on the path which has led him to working with National Geographic Learning. A firm believer in the communicative approach to language learning and student-centered learning, Alex enjoys working with innovative, thought-provoking materials and presenting on a wide range of ELT-related topics, all the while driven by his passion for developing teachers on a global scale and helping them to reach their true potential. So here to speak with us today with the presentation Connect 4, the importance of connections in language learning, please welcome Alex Warren.
Hi, buenos dias, gracias Mark for the lovely kind words as introduction, and thank you to all of you for joining me on your Saturday mornings, which I know can be very precious times for all of you. So it's very much appreciated that you are here, and I hope that you enjoy the session. I'm just gonna do something very quickly. There we go. So we're here to talk all about connections, and specifically 4 connections, hence the title Connect 4. And this is the agenda that we're going to kind of go through during the session. So we're going to start off by looking at what kind of connections we mean in regards to the efficiency of language learning. And then towards the end, we'll have a turn and talk breakout room session where you get to reflect, talk to each other about the content of the session. And then we're going to finish off with a Q&A. Now, aside from the breakout rooms, this is going to be a very interactive session. Okay, so we will be using the chat box a lot when I ask you questions. You will also need your phones for additional activities. We're going to sort of use some external sites during the session, so have your phones ready for the... I've unmuted myself somehow. Okay, so let's make a start. So connections. They are super, super important in language learning. But really, though, we want to consider what kinds of connections are we talking about here. And before I tell you, I want you to tell me what you think you know about the importance of connections. So in the chat box, can you answer this question? What kind of connections do you think learners have to make to facilitate effective language learning? Or at least what connections do you need to help the students make through the way you teach, the materials you use, etc. So what kind of connections do you try to make? Okay, human, cultural, linguistic. Thank you very much, Oscar. Lovely, Rita. Know each other. Yes, absolutely. So they need to connect to each other. Connect to their own experiences. Thank you, Laritza. Connect to their peers, connect to their teachers. Thank you, David. Empathy, respect, real world references. Thank you, Catherine. Social and friendly values. Thank you, David or David. With teacher, with students, with media. Thank you, Mary. All great answers, all ticking lots of boxes. Peer work, tolerance. Okay, good stuff. Trust, human connections, adaptability, social connections, cultural connections. Perfect. All great answers, and certainly a lot of these come up throughout the session. But we're going to start with maybe not the most important. We can argue which is the most important later on, and is in fact something you will be doing in the breakout rooms. But for me, kind of the primary thing that we need to do is we need to be able to create connections between the students and also the teacher. So connecting to peers, connecting to the teacher, because building up a rapport with your learners, between learners, will allow them to feel connected to others in their learning community. They need this to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel supported in their learning journey. In fact, some report by Fredericks in 2014 go as far as to say that Students who have positive relationships with their peers have been found to have high levels of engagement, motivation, and achievement. Now, for me, that is kind of the holy grail of what we want our students to achieve, right? We want them to be more engaged. We want them to be more motivated. We want them to achieve higher. And I'm sure you all agree with this statement. It is the bedrock. It is the foundation of the language learning classroom. Without it, learning just isn't going to happen at the pace, the speed, the efficiency that we may want it to. But the big question, therefore, is how can we create these positive relationships between the students and indeed with the teacher? What kind of things do we need to be able to facilitate and do in our classrooms? So again, just in the chat box, maybe to share what you already do to help your students to make connections to each other, to help to create this learning environment that is supportive, that is helpful. Okay, lovely, Carla. Being transparent and sincere as a teacher, absolutely. What else? I mean, lots, there's so many answers to this question, really. Okay, of course, knowing their interests. Seeing each other as we are and value what we have. Really nice, Ivan. Yeah, they need to feel safe in the school and classroom. Exactly. So that's up to you as the teacher to create that environment where they feel that they can make mistakes. Because we all know that is the one thing students fear most. They fear being ridiculed for making mistakes in the classroom. So we need to make sure that that is out of the equation as much as possible. And that is by getting them to know each other as well as possible, to build that trust, to build that sincerity between them. Yeah, absolutely, David. Talk about yourself. Absolutely. Share who you are. I think that's so important to make you look human, all the more so in the online environment. I am a person, not just a teacher. All great answers. I'm going to suggest 4, which we'll kind of go through sort of briefly. This idea of promoting trust, empathy, and acceptance. Because as soon as there's less conflict, less verbal put downs, there's going to be better achievement amongst your students. And this is done, of course, by learning about each other. So lots of getting to know yous, icebreakers, personalization tasks. Because essentially, the more that they know about each other, the better things will be within the classroom. So lots of classroom mingles, not just pair work. There's a lot of it is about classroom management, as well as the kind of activities that we do. So it's promoting that trust and empathy. And that links into promoting group cohesiveness, a feeling of us against the world, a sense of belonging. Because if they have that sense of belonging, they're far more likely to be engaged in the tasks on hand in your lessons. So that might be lots of teamwork, lots of group work. Competition works really well to create group cohesiveness. And then, of course, that leads into the idea of collaboration. Of course, collaboration is absolutely key. Now, this goes beyond just basic pair work. Collaboration means creating together, working together to create something. And then the 4th one I would suggest is this idea of promoting shared responsibility, in that they are taking responsibility for the learning as much as you are. They are dependent on each other, not just the teacher. They can learn from each other. And we'll look at ways of doing these very, very shortly. So just in the name of getting to know each other a little bit more very quickly, because this is absolutely vital and something even more important in the online environment. So something I do at the beginning of a school year is even before we started the school year, I want students to introduce themselves to each other. So what do? I set up a class Padlet where I introduce myself and I say 3 interesting things about me. So the students get to know about me and it models it. So for example, I have a twin brother. I love watching, reading about and playing cricket, and I have visited over 50 countries rather. So I send this out to my students, and then they add in 3 things that nobody knows about them, or 3 secret things, or 3 relatively unknown things about them. So this is a live Padlet, okay? So what I would like you to do is scan your QR code if possible. Or I'm going to put the link in the chat box for you. And I would like you very quickly to navigate to this Padlet and to write 3 things about yourself that people generally don't know. That secret life of you, so to speak. But what's important here as well, though, is I want you also to read what other people have to say and try to find somebody who has something in common with you beyond just being an English language teacher, and to ask questions. So, for example, maybe you also are a twin and you want to ask me about my twin. Are they younger? Are they older? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Tell me about your twin. So it's a kind of reciprocal process. It's not just about saying who you are, it's asking questions, using that as a springboard or as an opportunity to find out more about each other. So I'm now going to go to that live Padlet. So I can see they're lovely, there's things in here. So Jonathan, I can see, is the oldest in his family. Ivan has loves a strong coffee with no sugar. I'm sure that is true for many, many Latin Americans. Okay, Alice has got 2 daughters. I'm trying to move these around. I love dancing. My name's Anna. I love watching movies and I love sushi. I also love sushi. So trying to, oh, wow, look at this, amazing. I have you have twins, says Anonymous. Married twice to the same man, amazing. Trying to do this so we can all see. Why is it doing that? I'm not sure. I'm trying to find someone else who I've got something in common with. But try and read as many as you can into the next couple of minutes and find somebody who you have something in common with. Ask them some questions. Okay, so I'm going to write here, for example, to Ella. She loves watching movies. So I'm going to write, me too. What kind of movies, my spelling's awful, do you like? So we're kind of starting a dialogue here. Okay, I'm trying to read as many of these as I can. Amazing. So I'm learning all about you, even though we are a long, long way apart from each other. Because I didn't say this, so I'm coming to you from the UK today. Oh, well, I've got somebody who has an identical twin sister. Fantastic. But which is older? I'm going to ask there in the chat box, in the who is older and how many minutes? There's little things like this, right? It's quite interesting, and it just helps you get a sense of who people are. If anybody's asked about me, here we've got some questions here. It's not my chat, that's fine. I am a twin, and I am the younger twin, which I'm never ever allowed to forget, even now, many years later. And it's only 5.5 minutes, right? I think it's 5 minutes 30 seconds, more or less. But that has affected my whole life in many ways. Okay, I'm going to leave this Menti Meter, this Padlet up throughout the session. So please keep reading, keep adding as we go through the session if you can. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how we can help students to connect to learn more about each other, not just in the classroom environment, but also outside of the classroom environment, or indeed in the online environment. And certainly, that's one way of doing it. But really, it is this idea that the more students work together, the more they'll know about each other, the more they'll find in common, thus creating a more positive, a more understanding, and supportive learning environment. That is, like I said, the bedrock the foundations for everything that we do in the classroom. Without that, we're going to really struggle to get that buy-in. So we need to have course books that allow us, or to create activities that allow us to make those connections between students. And, you know, with a communicative approach that most course books now take, this is commonplace. It's done, it's there. You know, activities like this, talk with a partner about your hobbies, what you like, what you do, etc. This one here, all about interviewing about what kind of job you want to do in the future. And course books are full of these kind of activities, and they are fine to an extent. Because while these activities, they help to develop familiarity between students, they generally work in the same pairs or work with their friends. So we need to make sure that we switch these activities up and turn them into classroom mingles wherever possible, to allow them to talk to as many people as possible in a class. Therefore, there's more chance of interacting with classmates they might not normally interact with and finding a connection. But, you know, this kind of thing is fine. However, they build a connection in terms of learning more about each other, but they don't necessarily promote group cohesiveness, or they're not particularly collaborative, or they don't promote a shared responsibility. So what else can we do to build on those aspects of cohesiveness, collaboration, shared responsibility, rather than just getting to know about each other? Well, one very simple, easy way of doing that is more peer-to-peer collaboration. Students have to be encouraged to work together with a common goal. And this, you know, they might kind of worry about this because maybe in their educational experiences, they've been taught to view collaboration as more of a form of cheating. Cheating may be too strong, but they're not doing it by themselves. Because, for example, when assignments are designed for students to work together, either by sharing their work or engaging in peer evaluation, they become more critical of their own work while increasing their knowledge and understanding of course material as a whole. So key to all of this is the idea of peer teaching. It involves direct interaction between the learner and, well, learner and student, but also teacher-student, which helps them promote the active learning along with interpersonal skills. It reinforces their own learning. Students actually feel more comfortable interacting with a peer than a teacher very often. Peers and students share a similar discourse, allowing for greater understanding. And it develops those interpersonal skills. It builds trust, it builds empathy, it builds understanding. And certainly, you know, the whole concept of peer teaching is not something new. It can be traced all the way back to Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, and his use of archons, or student leaders. So it's something, not something new, but it's something that maybe we need to focus more on. Changing these perceptions of the teacher being the sole holder of knowledge, because they're not. Students also hold knowledge, which they can share with one another. So yeah, many benefits to peer teaching. They include engaging and motivating learners, increasing all student active participation. Instead of just a teacher giving a grammar presentation or telling about vocabulary, they're working together to decide what the grammar is, or to work out what the rules are. It fosters those interpersonal skills which are vital: collaboration, trust, understanding, and empathy. It can empower the learners, enhances their autonomy, reinforces their own learning, and arguably most importantly, it makes learning more memorable.
Alex, may I interrupt just for a second? I think
Of
you're still
course you can.
sharing the Padlet. So I'm
Oh, am
assuming,
I?
yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No problem, no problem.
I'm
No, we were highly engaged listening to you, so
so
we didn't miss
sorry.
anything, but
Well,
I
I did
started
not
to
realize.
suspect that there was something else that we weren't seeing. Okay,
Yeah. I'll go back really quickly. Well,
all right,
I shouldn't
thanks.
miss too much there. I apologize. Thank you, Mark. So yeah, many benefits to peer teaching. But a lot of books still don't do it, unfortunately. So we as teachers need to be maybe more proactive about how we can encourage students to peer teach, to use that existing knowledge. Here's an example within a course which does allow a certain amount of inductive guided discovery teaching. So we've got some questions here. When we say used to, the past activity is still no longer happening now. So students are reading the example sentences and analyzing them and working the rules out for themselves, or at least in pairs. They're negotiating meaning. So we need to do more of this, even from a younger age, for sure, because it helps them to develop that autonomy and also that overall understanding. So let's do another example of that. So we've got a lesson here all about comparative, superlative, and equative, but it's just a grammar presentation. So it's very much a teacher-led, deductive approach to grammar. So how could we make this grammar lesson more inductive, more student-focused, to allow students to work together to get an understanding of the comparative and the superlative and the equative? Any ideas, please share in the chat box. And there's not necessarily a right answer or wrong answer here. But if as a teacher you saw this in your course, but you think, okay, great, fine, but I don't want just to tell them the answers. I want them to discover them for themselves. What would you do? What could you do? Oh, I love that one, Stephen Vargas. Straight in on the student level. Who is stronger, Hula or Captain America? Perfect. Yeah, sorry, yeah, I thought you meant, yeah, thank you, Stephen, Hulk or Captain America. Give written examples, exactly. Lots of examples. Try to encourage them to see patterns. Get them to analyze it. So yeah, we still need to give them guided questions, but they have to slowly work out the rules for themselves. That might be the kind of the spelling rules. It might be the use of the with the superlative, but give lots of examples, give them time to work it out for themselves, to analyze, because students are smart. They have an ability to analyze and reason to come up with an answer. They don't just have to be told. Well, really nice. Use pictures of identical twins and have them to compare. We'll use comparative, superlative, and equative. Definitely. I love that idea, Evelyn. Really nice. Quite tough because they're identical in many ways. Use images. Okay, good. You get the idea. But I think we need to sometimes, as teachers, take control of the course book in many ways. Okay, the course book's done it this way, but I don't want to do it this way. Break out from that straitjacket that a course book often provides for teachers. And the same is true as vocabulary, right? We need not to just tell students the meaning of words because they don't listen. It goes in this ear, out the other. And as research from Paul Nation and Stuart Webb point out, vocabulary learning is enhanced when learners infer meaning of words by themselves or negotiate it with other learners. And that's what we want to do. We want them to negotiate what meanings. Now, unfortunately, I can't put you together right now, and we're not in a group, but what I would do in class is I'll do this kind of activity where I give them, well, these are kind of 4 words which I Googled as the weirdest words in English that you shouldn't know. And what I do, if I'm in a live environment, I would give these words to you and say in pairs, work together to try to work out what these words actually mean. I'm not going to tell you the meaning. I want you to think about it. So have a quick look at it. And we're going to come back to this a little bit later, okay? I'm going to ask you the meaning or what you think these 4 words might mean. So maybe take a screenshot, write them down. What do you think these words might mean? And we'll come back to that later in the discussion activity. And that way, hopefully, you learn from each other, you work together, you strengthen the bonds. Another really nice activity you can do with peer teaching vocabulary, and one which I actually learned from a teacher in Ukraine, is called Words I Know, Words I Think I Know, Words I Don't Know. So we've got a reading, we've got all of these words which we want to pre-teach, but we don't want to stand at the front of the class and just tell the students what they mean. So we give them a list of the words and we ask them on their own to put them into different boxes. Words I know, words I think I know, words I don't know. You give them 2 or 3 minutes on their own to do that. Then you pair them up and they compare their lists. So for example, maybe I have the word algae in the box words I don't know, but someone in my group has got it in words I know. So that student can peer teach me what that means. Maybe I have the word bleaching in words I think I know, and my classmate in my group also has it in words I think I know. So we can work together to try to define, to clarify our understanding of that word. Because I might say, well, I think bleaching means this. And he goes, oh, I don't think it does mean that. I think it means this. So we can work together to negotiate that meaning. And that is a far more efficient way of learning vocabulary than just a teacher telling the students what the words are, because they are working together. They're using their existing knowledge to help one another. So peer teaching is really, really powerful. And really, that kind of buys into my whole philosophy of teaching. And that is that the art of teaching is not necessarily just teaching, it is the art of assisting discovery, helping them to work things out for themselves, either individually or at least in pairs or groups. They are working together. And that builds the trust, that builds the support, the empathy that we want to achieve within the classroom. But it's also about building that responsibility. So yes, peer teaching builds responsibility to each other and to the class as a whole, and of course to themselves. But how else can we build that shared responsibility? Something I like to do with certain classes is to use success criteria. Now, I'm sure you are all aware of what success criteria are, but just to check your understanding, can you, in the chat box, just write me a short definition of what you understand is the meaning of success criteria when it comes to tasks and activities? What do you already know? What do you think you know about success criteria? Okay, good, Mark. Observable outcome, yes, but it's a little bit more than that. It's not just the end outcome. It's more about maybe the process and what is included in that target. What do I need to include to successfully achieve the goal? So yeah, it's rubrics and understanding. Yes, it's reaching goal, but it's the steps to reach that goal. So this comes from John Hattie in his book, Visible Learning. Success criteria is a list of features that a teacher wants the learners to include in their work during the course of a lesson and in the final activity. Okay, and success criteria can be given for any task, and they're essentially an extension of the instructions, which show students exactly what they need to do to be successful. Now, ideally, students would work with the teacher to formulate what the success criteria might be, because that involves them in the process. They are very much aware of what success looks like. So let's kind of do an example of that. So imagine we are teaching our group, we're doing this activity with our group, find the differences. So this is from a sort of A2 plus level book. To successfully complete this activity, what criteria do you think might need to be included? What language do students need to use to do this correctly? Yes, the end goal is to find all 10 differences or 8 differences. But how do I do that successfully? What language do you think is necessary? Tell me in the chat box. What success criteria might be necessary for this activity? This is just, I'm basing this on you obviously being language teachers. You know that when you do this kind of activity, what is needed? Okay, so using the correct vocabulary to describe them. Yes, their clothing. So clothing vocabulary. Maybe comparative adjectives. Yes, David. Okay, actions in progress. So present continuous is vital to do this task accurately. Correct pronunciation, correct usage of colors is important. Asking questions in the present continuous is vital to do this effectively. Perfect. So, we say to our students, okay, to do this task effectively, you need to be able to do this, 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 and this. For example, this is the list I came up with. So asking questions using the present continuous, using contractions with the correct intonation, using present continuous to describe your picture, using appropriate prepositions of place. Make sure you describe what the people are wearing. And the ultimate goal, of course, find all the differences. But you do that by using the appropriate language points that are needed. And what this then allows for is for students to self-assess and to peer assess. So afterwards they can reflect, okay, well, did we do this? Did we ask questions using the present continuous? Or did you answer my questions using the present continuous? And did you use a contraction? Yes or no, sometimes. So what it does, it encourages students to take responsibility for their own learning, their own progress, but also each other's. And that builds trust. That builds empathy, because they need to be able to help each other, support each other. And that includes telling them when they're wrong, as well as when they've done something correctly. So that works well with listening or speaking activities. It also works well with writing activities. So here, students have had to write a text, and then afterwards they choose how to, well, they talk about how they chose to organize their responses and which expressions they used. So they're reflecting on it together about what they did. But for me, it's important to take that a step further and to give effective peer feedback wherever possible. And to help them do that, I use the ladder of feedback, which they work together on. So, I've done my piece of writing, I've shared it with my partner and vice versa. And I want to give feedback. So first of all, I need to clarify. So before giving any feedback, I should ask any questions that I have about any unclear points or missing ideas from my partner's piece of work. Once I've clarified that, I value it. I comment on all the good stuff, on all of the strengths that they've done, because that creates a supportive environment. So this should stress the positive and interesting points. I'm praising my partner. But then I share my concerns. So I comment on the concerns about the work, areas that I think need to be improved, that need more attention, what's missing, what could be done to make it better. And of course, it's all done in a non-threatening way. And again, this builds trust. It builds support between learners. And then the final step of the ladder is we offer suggestions about how to improve the work. Ideas that the learners, or ideas that will help learners think about the way forward, if possible. And, even with kind of younger teenage learners, that can be really effective, just because it builds that trust, it builds that responsibility, and it builds that autonomy as well. So it's building responsibility, essentially that. So that's kind of ticking all of the boxes that we saw earlier. Of course, I want to really briefly touch on this idea of collaborative classwork and projects as well. Working together to have an end goal. Okay, in other words, teamwork. Certainly, project work can be really great in developing that collaborative nature, that kind of working together with an end goal. So, we've all used projects. We know projects work. They work on so many different levels, but really it's about that collaboration, communication with each other. So for example, we've got here a unit all about celebrations. It might be we have a project where we get them to design their own festival or their own event. So what are you celebrating? When's the festival held? Et cetera, et cetera. It's creative, it's collaborative. They're working together, not against each other or not just as a general speaking task. There's that end goal. So try to make sure there is a collaborative goal at the end of each lesson as well. And then, of course, they present it to the class. So, for example here from time zones, level 3, project, what problems do astronauts have in space? Think of an invention to help solve one of their problems. Create a poster. Don't do it on your own, work together. A communicative activity here, it's a classic rank order activity where you have to choose the 3 items to take with you, add 3 items of your own, compare, contrast, create a definitive list, working together. Okay, so just to kind of finish this section, because time is flying by. Studies have shown that when learners work in groups, it leads to improved achievement. We want that. Retention of learning, we want that. Social achievement, we want that. As well as increasing intrinsic motivation, we definitely want that. It can lessen the stress of contributing in a whole class situation and give more time for learners to work at their own pace. So connect to each other. Number 2, moving on quickly. Connect to prior learning and knowledge. And certainly this is a key principle for effective learning and teaching, because learning is only meaningful when it is relatable, connected to the learner's prior knowledge. Really famous quote here from David Azubel. Prior knowledge is the most important single factor in influencing learning. Ascertain this and teach them accordingly. So this links to this whole idea of schema theory, which has huge implications for the classroom. We have to know what our learners know before we start teaching them, because we don't want to bore them. So we have to connect learning to a previous lesson, to previous experiences learning the language. How can we do this? One of my favorite things to do is to use entry tickets. Entry tickets are great just as a 2-3 minute activity at the beginning of a lesson to find out what students can remember from a previous lesson, or to find out what they know about a topic that we are going to be studying in class. And this can be done on pieces of paper in class, or for me, I prefer using something like Menti Meter. So let's do this very quickly. So imagine we're going to be doing this unit all about music. But me as a teacher, I want to know what you know already about music, because I don't want to reteach you vocabulary you already know. So this is a live Menti Meter. Please take your phones and go to menti.com. The code is 9355 2089. Menti.com in the chat box. And what words connected to music do you already know? You're going to come up with hundreds, okay? I know that, but I want to do a beautiful, pretty Menti Meter cloud. So I'm going to just share that screen as well now. Okay, it's going to take a little while. Well, actually, I'm just going to read some more of these while you're doing that. Okay, Adriana, see, I'm the same as you. I've got 2 brothers. I'm the same. We've made a connection. Okay, the code, let me go back to the code for you then. The code is 93552089. I'll put in the chat box, 93552089. There we go, lots of words coming through. Notes, rhythm, instruments, heavy metal, concert, singer, genres, lovely. Boom. So the point here is straight away, I know what you already know. And I could then use this as an opportunity for peer teaching. So I put my students into groups and to get them to go through all of the words in the brainstorm, in the Menti Meter, and clarify and help each other to understand what these words mean. So it goes back to what we saw just now about working together, peer teaching, building trust, empathy, support. Lovely. Tempo, calming, dancing, melody, headphones. Keep them coming. I'm going to get hundreds here, aren't I? And that's only 33 people voting. Good stuff. So once I've got that as a teacher, I'm really aware of how much you know. And I then teach you accordingly. I might clarify some things, but I'm not going to spend the lesson boring you with things you already know. I'm going to come back to and what I get as well, of course, is a beautiful Menti Meter with all of those amazing vocabulary, which I can then save as the PDF and share post-lesson as a record of work and for revision at a later date. Okay, let's come back to PowerPoint. Hopefully I've come back to the PowerPoint this time. Okay, so yeah, entry tickets are great. So we've done it as a vocabulary lesson there, but we could also do it with grammar. So imagine we're teaching this lesson on the passives. I'd ask my students, what do you already know about the passive? Just talk about it in pairs. Maybe I get them to write a sentence using the passive. I might invite them to come up to the board to do that, or in the online classroom to write it in the chat box. Alternatively, I might just do on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you using the passive? So straight away, I know where my students are at in regards to a grammar point, a vocabulary. And therefore, I can teach them appropriately. And that's the key thing. Thank you very much there, Jose, for your example sentence. Lovely. And again, I should add here as well, that inductive approach also works really well with helping students to connect to prior learning. Because it's maybe they already have existing knowledge about the passive, and the inductive approach to grammar can help them to clarify that, to reinforce what they already know or don't know. This also applies, of course, to reading and listening text as well. And I come back again to the idea of the schema theory. You know, call it schema, call it relevant knowledge, relevant background knowledge, prior knowledge, or just plain experience. When students make connections to the text they are reading, their comprehension increases. Do you want your students' comprehension to increase? Put a thumbs up for yes. Absolutely, of course we do. Therefore, we have to activate existing knowledge, connect to existing knowledge. And there are 3 areas of schemata that we can focus on. We've got the linguistic schemata. What does this mean? It means the language proficiency in vocabulary and grammar. Without it, it may be impossible for the student to decode and subsequently comprehend the text. So it's thinking about specific vocabulary, specific maybe grammar that might appear in that type of text. So if there's a newspaper article, we know there's going to be lots of passives in there. And if you don't know the passive, it's going to be more difficult to understand. We've got the formal schemata, which are the organizational forms and rhetorical structures. So if it's a story, it's knowing that a story follows once upon a time, after that, next, subsequently, in the end, and so on. If it's formal essay, furthermore, moreover, this kind of thing, we have to understand the structure. And then the one that we do most of all is the content schemata. Activating that existing background knowledge of content, of the content area, of the topic familiarity. What do we know about art? What do we know about Van Gogh in this respect? And I think that's what we do most of all, but we maybe don't focus so much on the linguistic or the formal schemata. So how can we do that in practice? One of my favorite tasks to do is called Think, Puzzle, Explore. And this is a thinking routine that activates that prior knowledge. It generates ideas and curiosity and sets the stage for deeper inquiry. So the think, what do you think you know about this topic? It's not what do you know, it's that subtle difference. What do you think you know? So in the chat box, tell me what you think you know about where the iPhone is made. What do you think you know? Jose thinks they're made in China mainly. Katia says almost nothing, maybe from California. Well, that's where Apple is based, but are they actually made there? China and Kali in China. Okay. Mainly China, no idea. Okay, fine. We then move on to the puzzle. What questions or puzzles do you have about where iPhones are made? You know, if it's an American company, why are they maybe made in China? How long does it take to make an iPhone? How many components are there in an iPhone, for example? And then finally, the explore. What does it make you want to explore more of? What else do you want to know about iPhones? Exactly, Mark. Are they produced in multiple countries? Where are the source materials from? Exactly. Let's answer those questions. Here's the text. I'm going to zoom into it for you so you can read it a bit better. Have a quick read and see if what you thought you knew about where iPhones were made is correct. So a lot of you said about California, but that's where the headquarters is. But the answer actually is more complex. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Okay. Obviously, we haven't had time to do that in massive detail, but you get the idea of how the process works. And it just helps them, to motivate them to read, gives them a reason to read, a purpose to read, and of course, activating that schemata enables them to read it, hopefully more fluently with greater understanding. And as Jeremy Harmer says, the more that students bring of the text, of themselves to the text, or the task of reading a text, the better. So the more connections we can make, the better. Okay, so that's number 2. Connect to existing knowledge, to prior knowledge. Number 3, moving on really swiftly, is, of course, connect to themselves. And by this, I don't mean connecting prior knowledge, I mean connecting to their lives, to their experiences. Because we have to make it as relevant, as meaningful as possible. If language learning is not connected to their lives, why am I learning the language? How is it going to help me? Therefore, at every turn of the language learning process, we have to make sure they're using it to talk about themselves and their past experiences. Otherwise, it will not stick with them. And as Gertrude Malskowitz said many, many years ago in her lovely book, Caring and Sharing in the Foreign Language Class, transfer to the textbook is easier when the content starts with the student himself and then leads into the material to be learned. Let the students first discover what they can generate on the subject from their own personal thoughts and feelings. By drawing on their own experiences and reactions, the transfer to the textbook will be more relevant, more apparent. And I would also add to that, don't just start with a student, end with the students as well. And of course, we do this a lot of the time. We start with that warmer, connecting it to their lives. But I want to share some other activities with you that can help you do that in a really nice way. And the first one is called the 3 whys. And this is a thinking routine that nurtures a disposition to discern the significance of a topic by keeping a personal, a local, and a global view in mind. So, the 3 whys. So we've got this topic here all about the changing planet. Why might this topic matter to me personally? What is my personal connection to this? Really quickly in the chat box, tell me. Why might this topic matter to you as teachers in Costa Rica, in Nicaragua, in Mexico, wherever you are in Central or Latin America? Why might this topic matter to you as an individual? Have a think and then share your ideas. Yeah, lovely, Mary. Do I pollute the planet? To make consciousness about preserving nature. Good. It may affect the future opportunities where, when you know the importance of my home, exactly, because I love nature, our home, exactly. So of course it has relevance to us. But then we kind of spread it out. Why might it matter to the people around me? My family, my friends, my city, or even my country? Why is it specifically important to my country? You know, a lot of those Central American countries, you've got long coastlines, lots of beaches, lots of wildlife, and maybe lots of plastic washing up on it. So the country is especially important to you. And then on a wider scale, we look at why might it matter to the world as a whole. And I think that's something that we do a lot. We talk about pollution, globalization as a world issue, but focus it down onto the individual student. Why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to my kind of local? Why does it matter to the world as well? And that helps them to make connections, or 3 different levels of connections to the topics that they are studying. And of course, you know, using National Geographic Learning books, we have lots and lots of beautiful photos that lead into a unit to activate schemata, to make a personal connection. So I love being able to use these in a kind of very kind of personal way. And we have this thing called the personal viewing of a picture. So we have this image here, a little bit crazy one. And we may ask these questions. How does the image make you feel? And why does it make you feel this way? Does any other images come to mind when you see it? How is it personally relevant to you? Does it remind you of something? Can you identify with it or relate to it in any way? And if so, how? So let's do this with you really quickly. How does this image make you feel and why? Tell me in the chat box. How does the image make you feel and why? So I'm not really worried if it's Black Friday or whatever it is. I just want to know how it makes you feel. I want you to make a connection to it. And maybe it has personal relevance to you. Maybe you've been in this scenario. Anxious, overwhelmed, surprised, nervous, stressed, frustrated. But maybe, you know, we've all been in sales. Maybe this is, you know, when shops reopened after being locked down for 6 months or however long it might have been for you guys over there. Certainly this is how it was in the UK a few weeks ago when shops finally opened. But it's making connections to my experiences. Have you ever been in a scenario like this? How did it feel? And a similar kind of task to that, kind of again links your experiences, your knowledge to it, is one of my favorite tasks to do, another of my favorite tasks to do, I should say, called I See, I Think, I Wonder. You know, what can you see? What do you think? What do you wonder about the image? It's about making a personal connection. It's asking students, what do you want to know? What do you already know about it? So again, it's tapping into that knowledge. In the first instance, I see lots of crabs. I see 5 people. I see them wearing kind of wetsuit, well, waterproof jackets, etc. But I wonder, well, what do you think? What do you wonder? Tell me in the chat box. What do you think and what do you wonder about this photo? Yeah, it's a great one to catch here. Why? I wonder why they're so happy. I wonder if they get paid well. Always an important question, Jose. Are they celebrating success? Are they feeling wonderful because they have a job and families to feed? Too much food? Not necessarily, maybe. Are they going to get bitten by those beasts? Yeah, I think they're like spider crabs, right? I'm sure they got a bit of a strong bite on them. I wonder if they finished their job. Maybe it's break time. I wonder if they're happy. Okay, but we're making a connection from the students. It doesn't matter if they've never been or seen this job before, but it doesn't mean they can't make a connection in terms of what they wonder, what they think. And so, you know, course books are generally quite good at doing this nowadays. You know, in this case, it's reading all about your hobby being your job. Okay, what percentage of your day is sleep, work, school, free time? It's all about the students. And they go through the lesson, they do the reading comprehension, and then it again comes back to the student at the end. Think about your answers to these questions. What are your hobbies and interests? Why do you like them? Work in groups, tell each other your answers. So there's a really simple classic example of start with the students, end with the students. That will make it memorable. No matter what it is you've been talking about, reading about in class, connect to your students' lives, experiences, knowledge. Make it meaningful, make it relevant. A really good activity to help to promote this process is called the 4 C's. This is not the 4 C's of 21st century thinking of skills. It's not collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. This is a different activity altogether. What it does, it provides a structure for a text-based discussion built around making connections and asking questions. And it could be post-reading, it could be post-viewing of a TED Talk or some other documentary type task. So the first C is connections. Surprise, surprise. What connections do you draw between the text and your own life or your other learning? So it's all about our attraction to fright. We like being scared or watching horror movies, but why? Do I have a connection to that? Can I understand it? How do I feel about fright and being scared? So connect the text to yourselves. But also, we want them to challenge. What ideas or what positions or assumptions do you want to challenge or argue within the text? Maybe you heard or read something that you disagree with. This is a place to do it. Then we have concepts. What key concepts or ideas do you think are important and worth holding on to from the text? In other words, what do you connect with in terms of being the most important thing? What are you going to share with other people about it? And of course, everyone has different answers to these questions because people take different things from a text or from a listening activity. So that's 3 of the C's, but what is the 4th C? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone guess what it might be? We've got connections, challenge, concepts. What might the 4th one be, do you think? Very good, Catherine. Change. You're absolutely right. You're the first person to get that right ever. What changes in attitude, thinking, or action are suggested by the text, either for you or for others? And I guess we could say conclusion as well. In other words, is it going to change your thinking, or is it going to change your behavior in regards to this kind of whatever the topic is about? Maybe yes, maybe no. But a really nice routine to make further connections to yourself. And another one that kind of is similar, but maybe it's more guided and therefore better for lower level students or younger students. It's just called Stop, Think, Discuss. And again, it helps students to reflect on what they have read or what they have heard on a personal level. Because I get really frustrated with course books when all they are a reading text and lots of comprehension questions. That's not real life. Real life is talking about what we have read and thinking about what we have read and sharing those thoughts and opinions with others. That's what we do. We read an article online or in a magazine. We tell other people about it more often than not. Oh, I read a really good article or great article about this. It said this, 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 and this, or it said this, but I didn't agree with it. So these kind of questions can really help to develop that personal connection. What did I find most interesting and why? Did anything surprise or shock me? Why? Did anything worry or concern me? Why? Did anything make me stop and think? Why? Was there anything I strongly agreed or disagreed with? Why? Why not? Has my view or opinion changed from reading this text? Why? Why not? It personalizes that reading experience. It connects the text to my own views and opinions. And that can be really, really powerful. And of course, it does also check comprehension, because to answer all of those questions, you've got to have understood, comprehended the text. So that's, talking about reading, vocabulary, etc. But of course, it's also true of grammar. We got to personalize grammar. We've got to make it relevant to their lives. So using what they have, what they're familiar with, can really help them with that. So here's an example. It's a lesson all about the present continuous. Great, but connected to their lives. You know, get them to talk about their photos on their phone. Well, in this photo, I'm doing this, or in this photo, my brother is doing this, or the people are doing X, Y, Z. Maybe it's the past simple. What did I do at my weekend? This is what I did my weekend. Personalize, personalize, personalize. Whether it's grammar, vocabulary, reading, listening, whatever. Connect to their lives. And as John Hughes rightly points out, personalization can create a positive learning environment for the learners and the teacher. We should always try to personalize any new language to make it relevant to the learner. Without that connection, learning will not be as effective. Which leads me on to the last point, and that is connect to the wider world, which we kind of touched on already a little bit, because that's what learning a language is all about. It's about making connections to people from other countries, cultures, places. And even the CEFR says this. Language learning and teaching overall goals should be to achieve a wider and deeper understanding of the ways of life and forms of thought of other people and of their cultural heritage. It's not just learning the language. And that's backed up in huge amounts of research. One that I found out recently was this one. 33% of language learners regarded learning about other cultures as a benefit of learning a foreign language. And in the same survey, 32% said it was being able to travel more, right? And that is all about connecting with others. So we need a course book that isn't just about British or native English speaking countries, US, UK, Australia, wherever. We need course books that have truly global content from every corner of the planet. Learning about the people, the places, and their cultures. Because that is a really strong way to show students why they're learning a language. And I think this quote really sums that up. Culture is a very powerful hook. It can heighten the interest and motivation of your students. In a prism of culture, language classes instantly become exciting educational experiences. Put your hands up. Do you want your classrooms to be exciting educational experiences? Yeah, of course we do. Students don't get excited about grammar and vocabulary. No one got excited by the present continuous or the past perfect continuous or gerunds and infinitives or whatever it might be. They get excited by learning about the world that they live in. And if the grammar, the vocabulary has been presented through that, that's fine. They will remember the lesson. So whether that's learning about the cradle of the Inca Empire, whether it's about wedding parties in Uruguay, whether this one's from Bolivia, people paddleboarding in South Pacific and Tonga, life events from around the world, wedding ceremonies in, I think it's in Macedonia. It's a journey around the world, and it begins as a journey into other cultures, but ultimately it ends as a journey into your own culture, because you're always going to bring it back to, well, how do we do these things in our country? It's an opportunity for students to reflect on their own culture. In other words, to personalize it. So, for example, imagine we've done this lesson all about the Harbin Ice and Snow Festival. Now, of course, no one has ever been to the Harbin Snow and Ice and Snow Festival because it's in China. In Central America, it never snows, or at least I don't think it ever snows there. Maybe it has once in a while. So you think maybe they can't make connections, but that's okay because we're still learning about the world. We're completing a word web about the Harbin Festival. But then how about comparing it, contrasting it to a festival in our country? So think about a festival in your own country and complete a similar mind map about it. Are there any similarities to the festivals seen in this unit? What are the main differences? So, it might be that they are celebrating XYZ at this festival. Well, how do you celebrate a similar thing in your country? There will always be something that is the same. And the beauty of learning about other cultures, other places, making those connections, is finding out what those similarities are, as well as embracing all of those differences. Okay, time is up. Oh, what's happened there? Okay, so just to kind of recap really quickly before I put you into breakout rooms. Make language learning engaging, memorable, and effective by making as many connections as we can. Connect them to each other. Connect prior learning. Connect to themselves and their own experiences, and connect to the world. So, thinking about that, thinking about everything we've covered in this session in the last 70 minutes, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. And I want you to talk to each other and share your thoughts and opinions and experiences. And to discuss these questions. So number one, apart from being connected as English teachers and Spanish speakers, try to find something else that you have in common very quickly. Of the 4 connections discussed, which do you think is the most important to make learning meaningful and memorable, and why? Number 3, tell your group about a time when you tried making connections in a lesson. What was the result? How did the students react? And finally, are there any other connections you try to make in your lessons? What are they? So in the chat box, Mark and Gendry have shared a PDF to this document. But otherwise, take a picture on your phone, take a screenshot, and we will put you into breakout rooms to discuss for about 10 minutes, I think. So I'm going to hand over to the team in charge, the troubleshooters, the tech team, to set up those breakout rooms.
Yeah. Thank you. So everyone, just remember, the idea here is to collaborate with your partners. You have a chance to get to know and work with other people. The whole theme of our conference this year is building a community of practice, right? So really making these connections among teaching professionals around Costa Rica and around the world. So please turn your camera on if you can, just to make that, visual connection as well. And of course, follow our conference etiquette guidelines of respectful communication with each other. Okay, so I think Gendry is ready to open the rooms now.
Yeah, we're ready to go. 3, 2, 1.
Here they come. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you all had fruitful discussions. I had a wonderful little group in room 6. So thank you to those that were there with me, discussing away. And it's just an opportunity to sort of reflect on what we have been talking about today a little bit. But now it is time for some questions. Maybe a little bit less time than we anticipated, but if there are any questions, please feel free to ask away. I'm not sure what the process is, but I'm sure that.
Sure. Yeah, so we want this to be as, as personal as possible. I already see a hand raised, so that's exactly what I was going to suggest. If you'd like to just ask your question directly to Alex, just raise your hand like that or write in the chat, and we'll make sure that we can open your mic. So give me 1 second here. Was that Catherine? Martin? Yes. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Alex. You were fantastic last year. And again, this year, we really appreciate your presentation.
Very kind.
Yeah, it was awesome last year. Thanks. Just a quick question for those of us who are teaching adults, and particularly adults that have a lot of life experience. Maybe their adult years are better than their childhood years for a number of reasons. And how do you kind of get those adult learners to not be interested in learning about other cultures and the beautiful pictures that Nat Geo provides, and not feeling like they're so stuck in a rut, or they're so limited as to where they live, and they can't even afford to get a passport to be able to see these places or have those experiences. How do you keep them feeling uplifted about learning about so many different cultures and things like that? Thanks.
I mean, it's a really interesting angle on it, because I've never thought about it that way, because I think the purpose of those images isn't meant to make them feel bad about what they maybe haven't accomplished in life. It's meant to be able to inspire them and give them the opportunity to see and meet people from other cultures, countries, places that they will never have the opportunity to do so. But I've never kind of thought of it as a sort of a negative, a potentially negative experience, because I guess it is meant to inspire them and not make them feel, oh, I've not achieved everything I want to achieve because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, that's a fact of life. You cannot travel to every country in the world, or you know, everyone has dreams of where they want to go and what they want to achieve, and those, you know, dreams don't always happen. So I think you have to, it sounds a bit cliched, but make them, you know, be thankful for what they have done, for what they have achieved, and embrace the National Geographic content as an opportunity to bring that world into their lives, and not to show them what they've been missing out on, but to just show them what else is out there, I suppose. I mean, it's a really tricky one, Catherine. It really is. I don't really sort of know how to specifically answer it beyond what I've said already in terms of making them not feel that they've missed out, but it's that opportunity to travel without traveling, I suppose. So yeah, sorry, yeah, not the greatest answer, I'm afraid. Sorry. It's really, I'll think about it. It's a really tricky one. Any other questions at all?
Yeah, so none coming in just yet, but everyone here, questions or comments are welcome.
Yeah, do it in the chat box if you don't feel confident to do it in the chat on audio.
Let's just wait a few more seconds to see if anyone is rapidly finishing up their message before they hit enter.
I mean, Diego's made a good point there in the chat. He says, take pictures of their community or surroundings more locally and start from there. So yeah, it might be a case of, yeah, embracing or celebrating what you already have, what you've already done on that level, and build it up from there, potentially. But yeah, I mean, the Nat Geo content is never meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to make you feel happy and inspired.
We have a question here from Lucia asking, what do you suggest to stimulate young learners to speak and make opinions?
Okay. I would say for that one, just amazing content and photography is always the key thing here with young learners, because they can talk about photos till the cows come home. You know, my 4-year-old, he just loves looking at my phone and just looking at the photos of all the places I've been able to go to, or even just of family pictures or whatever, and talking about them. And especially using images which inspire curiosity. That's kind of the key thing. I mean, curiosity is the key to learning for young learners. If you can show them a picture of something that is weird and wonderful that they've never seen before, to pique that curiosity, they're going to ask questions. They're going to want to know more about it. And that can then lead on to the reflection, okay, so maybe it's some food that they've been shown from Asia or somewhere that they've never even heard of. I say, well, this is what they eat for lunch in their country. What do you eat in your country for lunch? So it's kind of like comparing and contrasting as well. But starting with what they know, it's always got to come back to them, their thoughts, their opinions. But photography is a great way of introducing that to them. And certainly all the young learner titles from Nat Geo really focus on that. That is the entry point for them, to get them interested, to get them curious, and then the language builds from there. But all the while making it meaningful and relevant to their lives.
Right. Well, plenty of positive comments coming in through the chat. People saying that they got a lot out of your presentation. So I think we should wrap up here. But before we do, on behalf of the organizing committee for the National Conference for Teachers of English Costa Rica, we want to thank Alex so much for his presentation today, for his willingness to share his time and contribute to the success of our online event. So everyone, if you have your cameras on, please give him a warm virtual applause. Let him know that you appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for sharing your Saturday mornings. I mean, I'm very humbled that you've all maybe not got up too early, but you've you've got up on a Saturday morning to share your time with us, and it is very much appreciated. It really is.